What's up, guys? This is Corey with the Gym back in another video for y'all. So today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming ARG Indianapolis, which is this coming weekend. It's I think the only big event in this current format, which is an awkward spot that's post-ban but before anniversary box and power boosters for the World Martial Arts Tournament. So it's in a really interesting spot. It's kind of a little bit wide open in terms of what to expect. So today I'm going to go over 10 lists plus an honorable mention of decks that I think you can kind of anticipate to expect, whether it's decks you should worry about testing against or expecting to see, or maybe decks if you're still trying to determine what you should play. As always, whenever we do these type of videos, each one of these lists is more of a skeleton type list. I'm not saying that these exact 50 are what you should expect to see. These are just kind of combination of different things that I've seen in terms of these lists and my own ideas and things like that. But for the most part, they'll all cover the basic concept. You'll notice some of these do have a sideboard, some do not. The bulk of these do not have a sideboard. Some of these are my direct lists that I either have made for other people or I have in floating around in different test groups and things like that. So that's why some of these do have a sideboard where others do not. But anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get on into the lists. Alright, first up we've got our honorable mention. So this is Scuffle Time Dende. Honestly, Scuffle Time Dende is in a kind of a weird spot. I don't want to discredit it. Obviously, it's lost some with the loss of Child's Wish and things like that. But I do think the deck has potential, and I do think the deck is still plenty strong. Really, majority of the deck focused on the Fountain of Spirits engine as opposed to Child's Wish anyway. Which so it doesn't get hurt too much. I've not seen a whole ton of hype for it, but I know it's one of those super aggressive strategies. And especially in a more wide open-ish format, these are usually the types of decks you can kind of expect to see. So generally what the deck's trying to do is get out Scuffle Time Goten and Scuffle Time Boo. Whenever Scuffle Time Goten, they're both in play. Whenever he attacks, he's just a 10k, and then once per turn you can take a life, untap him, he gets plus 10k, and then you untap an energy. So basically what you're doing is you're just getting multiple of these out with Fount. It effectively makes Fount free because he's untapping as long as you have one Boo in play. Some other targets that we have off of this, we've got the Awkward Situation Trunks and Adasuki, which is the Trunks is also a Fount target. You can play him for free, and then you can play the Adasuki for free, which gives you 2 more 15k bodies, and things like that. Like I said, I still think the deck's probably in a weird kind of spot. I'm not super sold that it's going to necessarily do well. I do think it'll have some representation, but it'll be kind of interesting to see. That's kind of why it's stuck in that honorable mention. Alright, let's move on to the next list. Alright, so at number 10 we have Shenron Gogeta. Again, this is kind of benefiting from the fact that Super Shenron is no longer in the format. I don't expect this deck to do very well. I do expect it to get played moderately. It's just pretty much always been played since the inception of Shenron. I don't think the deck's ever been just too powerful. I know people are scared of it more than it is anything. Obviously what it's trying to do is just trying to get out Gogeta as quickly as possible. Whether you're objectioning and hard casting it, typically you're going to fuse into it. We got some Goku and Vegeta targets that are really nice here to fuse into it. And then you're using Gogeta or Shenron's Wish to give it triple attack. And it's already got triple strike and plus 10k, and then you can use the Figure of Majesty to give it crit. That's the idea. It's a super linear deck. Obviously it has an alternate win condition in the at all cost Vegeta, but typically you're going for this Gogeta spam. Like I said, it'll be played. I would expect to see it some, not probably a whole terrible too much, especially not anymore than maybe a little bit more than what we've seen in the past, but like normal, I'm not expecting it to do too well. Let's move on. Alright, so number 9, we have Pan Zeno. So Pan's always going to hang out. She'll always be probably majority of these top 10 type lists of decks to expect, and things like that. It's just pretty consistent, and it's been a staple in the format really since she's been released. Chain Attack Zeno is just an incredibly strong combination. It's a great check equalizer for a lot of what the format tries to do, regardless of really whatever the format is. It keeps things under control. It's got the standard stuff, Everybody's Pal Yamcha, to search for cards, and just red good stuff. Red's got really great 3 and 4 drop in that slot. Fearless Pan makes things incredibly aggressive. And then you've got After Image Technique, and is that all you got, which are 2 really great negates. Well, After Image isn't truly a negate, but it's the same kind of concept. Foreseeing Hit, still one of the stronger cards in the game. Having access to your opponent's hand is still really, really good. All in all, just a very good deck. It's just red good stuff, and Pan does it probably better than anybody else, just in terms of pure red stuff. But like I said, I would expect to see it. Pan's been kind of on a decline more recently, but without Super Shenron, I'd be interested to see if she kind of makes her way back up. Alright, so number 8, we have Gogeta Ramp. So Gogeta Ramp is in an interesting spot. Personally, I think the deck is pretty good. There's several different variations. This is probably a more standard variation. You're going to see more of a mono blue mid-range big threat type thing. Obviously, the whole core of the strategy is to get these Goku Vegetas in your hand early with the leader ability, get the Veku out, get the Veku killed, and then you ramp up into big energy going into turn 4, turn 5 with 6 and 7 energy, so you can start playing big threats. Obviously, one of the big bad threats for the deck is Gogeta. It's kind of a theme here with the Shenron Gogeta. Gogeta is just incredibly strong. We also have access to the Goku and Oob SCR, which is a really good bomb at 8. And then finally, Fu Shrouded in Mystery is just really good. Whenever you can get up to that 6 energy, it kind of shuts off a lot of strategies. All in all, just a really good deck. It's really kind of hard to deal with. If they get ramped up, it's incredibly hard to deal with. Alright, next up for number 7, fittingly we have U7 Frieza. Really the main reason this is on this list is because this type of deck has been seeing success overseas in the EU. And whenever a deck starts seeing success, you can kind of bet you'll see it at the next big tournament. It's still interesting. Obviously, U7's always been not always been lingering around, but it's been a really good strategy. It was the first Victory Strike deck. Now, honestly, it gets more tools that probably make it a little bit more consistent with the Path to Greatness and the Height of Mastery stuff, as opposed to going up into the 5-drop Goku, into the 8-drop, and then the Victory Strike and all that kind of stuff. All in all, the deck's interesting. Having access to Victory Strike is really just always a good way to go about it. Frieza has one of the better passive abilities in the game for a leader. Just pitch a U7, draw 2 cards. You don't have to swing. So unlike like a Broly or something like that, which we'll cover a little bit later, you don't ever have to really swing with the Frieza in order to gain that hand advantage, which is really nice. It'd be interesting to see how this deck transitions. Some of the lists that I saw were a little bit all over the place. I'm running all sorts of different techs and different things like that, which obviously you can do with your such a heavy draw engine on your leader side. But the list that I'm showing right now is, I feel, a little bit more consistent. Something I'd probably expect to see more here in the States, but we'll definitely see how that goes. Alright, next up we've got number 6, we've got Yellow Dende Frieza, hand destruction, whatever you want to call it. So this is one of those decks that you always have to be aware of. Like, if you're not prepared for this, you don't know what's going on, what it's doing, then it'll really just take over the game and kind of dominate. This has been an incredibly popular leader in terms of it doing well at events. You just don't see just like an absolute ton of them being played. So really what it's trying to do is it's trying to get all the Dragon Balls and drop as quickly as possible. Spam Revival of the Emperor to bring in the Clan of Terror Mecha Frieza and rip cards out of your opponent's hands. You get that knowledge of what's in their hand, and you're getting to remove things from their hand. We also have access into the 7-drop SR Frieza back from set 1. And really, just really good stuff all around. It's just, like I said, it's just a pretty consistent deck. You are running some 4-star balls, so you get access to more discard there. You've got the Frieza, which can come out like as soon as turn 2. You don't even need to really be flipped for that. But if you get to turn 2, you have one of these in the drop, you can just pay 2 for Revival the Emperor, bring it out, and just start clearing your opponent's hand from there. Really strong stuff. I do expect to see a handful of these. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see 1 or 2 of these sneak into top cut. Alright, moving on into number 5, we've got Lord Slug. So this is just pure hand destruction. This has obviously been a little bit more on the rise. The more Janemba is played, the more hand destruction type strategies are going to be played as well. Lord Slug's probably one of the better pure hand destruction engines that we have right now until we get the anniversary box stuff. But it's pretty simple what it does. It gets out the wings. Wings let you play the rest of your Lord stuff for cheap. And then all of these Lord Slug kind of interact with discarding cards or bringing cards into play. Lord Slug gains crit on the front and then pitch a card, discard a card on the backside. You thin the deck out with Assimilate, go find your super combos, and just really good stuff all in general. This deck does have like issues to Mercenary Tau. Obviously, typically people aren't running those in the main deck, so you don't really have to worry about the game 1, but going into game 2, that is a concern. We do run 2 main deck double impact Krillin. He's just some early removal, and then we can side in more of those as well. But again, this is one of those decks I would definitely expect to see, and not shocked at all to see at least 2 of these make it into top. Alright, next up we've got our number 4 deck, and this is our starter Broly. So pretty much everyone knows what this is by now. It's an incredibly strong, incredibly explosive deck. It has the potential to just dominate an event and win a tournament, even though generally speaking you're not going to see just a ton of these be played. Usually you'll see 1 or 2 of these sneak in top, and it's one on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of actually deck being played for the event. Green Yellow is pretty much the standard version of the list now. Basically you're just trying to do everything you can to get up into the big Limits Transcendent Broly, and then from there get into the SCR and kind of close out games. This does have the potential to win games turn 2, turn 3, if things just go exceedingly well. I think people have learned to play around Broly a little bit more than they had previously, but that still doesn't at all inhibit the fact that it's an incredibly strong deck, and something to definitely be prepared for, because this will most likely be a top cut contender. Alright, next up we've got our number 3 deck, and that is Vanilla Q, or Son Goku Vanillas, whatever you want to call it. So I will make the prediction now that this is the most played deck in the event. That's really been the trend really since these came out. It's one of the more accessible decks. As long as you have the Adventure Begins, then you can kind of go from there. Right now the list that I have on screen is a more mono blue variant. There is yellow blue as well, or mono yellow. Really, Goku has the advantages of being very you can run a lot of different strategies with it. There's a lot of different colors that work with him. There's a lot of different things to expect. There's reds, there's blue, there's yellow, there's mixed colors, and all that kind of good stuff. All in all, it's just an incredibly strong deck. It applies incredible pressure early. It has great hand advantage. It does everything like pretty well. Running the blue engine, you're able to get into things like the Gogeta, which again is one of the strongest cards in the game. One of the maybe the best finisher in the game right now. With the second exception being Demigra. Not counting Retreat Strike, obviously, but this deck has a really great access to running Gogeta, and then obviously you have Demigra as well. All around, just a great deck. Like I said, I will expect to see this in Force. There'll probably be 3 to 4 of these in Top Cut, depending on how much they break to. Alright, moving on into our second place deck, or our second expected deck. I think everyone kind of expected to see this near the top, and that is Janemba. There's a couple different ways to run Janemba now. You have mono blue or blue yellow. Right now I'm showcasing blue yellow. I think this may end up being the more commonly played variant, just because people are excited to actually get to use these multicolored cards, and it just adds another dimension to the Janemba deck, giving it access to things like Flying Nimbus, Pressure Ball, any of those really good yellow kind of play cards. Janemba is what Janemba is. It's mill, it's defense, it's stall, whatever you want to do. This game will just kind of drag you out, and from the second Janemba swings, you are on a clock. You either win before he decks you out, or it just doesn't happen, and you hope your pieces don't get milled. Janemba is controversial, maybe. I know a lot of people just aren't a fan of the deck in general. I think now it's in a better spot than it's been before, because I think there are a lot more ways to play around or play with Janemba as to what there were before, primarily with the inclusion of Tien Shenron Returning Fire, and then just other decks, people kind of understanding what Janemba is and how it's trying to do and when you can take advantage of everything. Alright, and then finally we've got our number 1 deck. This is the deck that I think you should most definitely be prepared to see. Again, it probably won't be the most played deck. I'm going to give that to Vanilla-Q, but I think this may be the deck that dominates the event in terms of just how well it does, and that is Broly Height of Mastery Victory Strike. This is the deck that's kind of climbing up the ranks and like becoming the go-to deck right now. Generally speaking, there's a couple different ways you can run it in terms of the main deck. I'm running or showing more of the draw engine variant. There's also more of a swap engine variant that runs the adoptive Gohan into the 2-drop Gohan that then swaps into the path. Versus this variation is running more draw engine and search, just trying to find our pieces. Really, kind of the joke about this deck is if you can count to 4, then you can win, and that's pretty consistent in my testing. I think 90% of the games that I've played, I'm winning on turn 4 with this deck, just getting out a Victory Strike, and there's nothing they can do. It's incredibly strong. It's like a big threat and something you need to pay attention to. Would not be shocked at all if this type of deck is the deck that ends up taking the event. But anyway, guys, that is it. That's all of our list. That's our top 10. Let me know what you think down below, and we will see y'all next time.